Hello, this is part two of Three Eye Atlas and the lost history of humanity. So, like I'm saying, right, here are people getting extraterrestrial or extra dimensional instructions to build things like the Ark of the Covenant. Even the tabernacle, God gave him a plan. This is how you're going to build this thing, right? Remember when the walls of Jericho came crumbling down? God said, you're going to go around it for 7 days, blowing your horns, and then on the seventh day, you'll blow your horns, then you will raise a shout of victory, and the walls will come down. And they came down. Scientists have shown that you can actually use sound vibrations to change the nature of matter, meaning those walls could viably have been brought down by the sound emitted by the trumpets and of the people's voices. All right. For example, you've heard of people being able to sing such high notes that they can shatter crystal glass. These are things that are anomalous to us, but if you know what is going on, you know that it's not anomalous. You know that it's just the laws of physics, but laws of physics that we aren't aware of. That's another thing. We have a certain field of knowledge called physics, but it doesn't take into account what's happening in other dimensions. Then you get quantum physics, which attempts to explain these types of things, right? But then there's also the unified field theory that says actually everything is just consciousness and everything is actually one, okay? And everything is interconnected, right? So what I'm saying is, for the longest time, human beings have always known that there were beings from other planets or other systems or other galaxies or beyond our sense perceptions who come here, do things and leave, teach people. Today, you'll still find people saying, I was stuck on the side of the road and this guy just appeared out of nowhere. He knew exactly what to do to fix my car. I turned around to thank him and he was gone. And they're like, it was an angel. All right. Or someone was drowning and an invisible force pulled them out of the water. Okay. And then talking about forces and water, mermaids, cultures across the world have said mermaids exist. There's some civilizations today who perform rituals of giving fruit in baskets to beings that live in the water. They call them mermaids. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, what happened to human beings that when something like Three Eye Atlas comes around, that we're seeing the signs that this is not a normal asteroid, because we've been studying asteroids and comets, right? We're seeing that there's something very different about this one. What happened to us that when we see this happening, we are not saying, oh yeah, sure, very well, it could be one of our brothers and sisters coming around for a visit from one of the other galaxies or star systems in our galaxy. Why not? What happened that when there's evidence that it could be extraterrestrial, that we're trying to find every reason not to believe that? Why is NASA shutting down the footage or the live feeds that should be showing us what's going on? The International Space Station also apparently has been capturing some very hectic images. Some of them are even saying that this asteroid is not even traveling alone. It's got like a tiny fleet, like an envoy, an entourage accompanying it. So why? And, it's not that also we are the first civilization or phase in human civilization to watch the stars. The Mayans have the most sophisticated calendar ever in human history, and they used to watch the stars nonstop. You look at the story of the Nativity of Christ. They watched the stars and they saw the star, which was indicating to them that the Messiah has been born, the Christ is here, and we want to come and worship him or honor him and bring him gifts, right? So there is something happening here. It speaks to a lack, though, on our part as humans at this moment, to actually appreciate what our ancestors almost took for granted, that yes, they are beings from beyond this planet who stop by every so often and pay us a visit. What's the big deal? They wouldn't be surprised. They'd be like, yeah, sharp. Just make sure that you behave yourselves properly because, they're not to be messed with in terms of the dignity that they carry. Because generally, also, if you look at the history of human beings and the interaction with extraterrestrial beings, when I say extraterrestrial, I just mean not from this earth. I'm not talking about aliens necessarily, even the word alien, what does it mean? It just means a foreigner, a visitor. You know what I mean? So we have these terms which have been given very negative connotations. So let me just say beings not from this planet, right? Or beings not from this dimension. When they interacted with him, it was generally for the good of humanity. However, like in the story of the Aztecs, there has been a show that there are some beings who are very malevolent to us as humans. And if you look, if you look at the story of the Aztecs, what happened is there was a being there called Viracocha, and he taught them how to build a functional civilization that works for the good of the people, right? And when they wanted to worship him, he said, okay, you don't need to do that, but if you really insist, then just sacrifice butterflies and flowers and incense. I'll be cool with that. Then other beings came and manipulated the Aztecs into believing that a very malevolent force was coming to swallow the sun and destroy the earth, because obviously everyone knows that without the sun, nothing grows and we're all going to die, right? And in order to placate this being that was going to swallow the sun, they had to engage in human sacrifice. And they say that Viracocha tried to fight against the people who were being manipulated by these beings, obviously with the help of the people who were on his side. And they were thwarted because these other beings, just like how you know with narcissists, they don't, there's no threshold of cruelty that they're not willing to cross. Whereas with empathetic people like Viracocha and his people, they're empathetic. So they're like, okay, we're not going to go there. We can't do that. But they're willing to do all that crazy stuff. So they manipulated, they lied, they obviously eliminated whoever they had to. And they got the powers that be in the Aztec kingdom to start engaging in human sacrifice. And then Viracocha left. And I think he took some of his followers with him. All right. And then the Aztecs descended into what what the conquistadors found when they got there, like in the 1500s, I think, which was the human sacrifice happening on the tops of these pyramids that had initially been built to honor or to connect to or to create maybe electricity or generate some sort of water irrigation system. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff that people talk about when it comes to the pyramids. Even the ones in Giza, they say there's a whole bunch that's underneath the ground that no one knows about. But then, going to the pyramids of Giza, if you look at them, they're not tombs like people say. Yes, there are sarcophaguses in there, but those sarcophaguses were there to perform certain initiatory rites for people's spiritual evolution. And they say there's two shafts, and they point, one points to Orion, right? And if you look at the shape of the pyramid, the layout of the pyramids, they correspond directly to the 3 stars in Orion's belt. And one of the other shafts points to Sirius, right? Why these massive monuments, which are huge, okay, I've been there, one brick comes up to my shoulder, one. Okay, it's incredible, absolutely staggering. They were there, in a way, they were observatories, weren't they? Or they were tracking the stars, but they definitely had something to do with outer space, right? And isn't it interesting that the god Anubis is a dog and Sirius is called the dog star? Okay, then you go to Mali and there's the Dogon people in Mali. They were taught by beings from outside of this planet that Sirius is a binary star system, and they taught them all sorts of other stuff, right? And they built their civilization. It was only in the 50s or 60s that Western scientists were able to actually, or in the 70s even, to actually study Sirius properly. And only then did they find out that it's actually a binary star system. Some of the Dogon are like, yeah, we knew that. How did they know? Then you go back to South America, go to Peru. There's the Nazca lines. These are geometric drawings on the earth that you can only see from space. Okay. I'm just going to go to part 3 now.